Hi, welcome to Artists in Residences, the Westport Library's virtual artist series. I'm Carol Fast, exhibit curator at the library. In this episode, Miggs Burroughs interviews Miggs Burroughs. Now, that wasn't a mistake. We've done over a dozen of these videos so far, and each one is as distinctive as the artist being interviewed. And behind each one, it's Miggs who's making the connections and drawing out each artist with his soft-spoken and always perceptive questions. But he's not one to toot his own horn, so I'm going to do it for him. It's a pretty long list, condensed for time, and I'm sure I've left things out. But for starters, he illustrated covers for Time magazine, a US postage stamp, and an Easter egg for the White House, which now resides at the Smithsonian. He's designed numerous websites, book covers, posters, and just about every type of printed material on the planet. He was the host of Miggs on TV, and now he co-hosts the podcast, Oh Brother, Not Another Podcast, which is available on iTunes. He's the author of the What If Book of Questions, which is available on Amazon. He's the co-founder of the Westport Artist Collective, a member of the Westport Arts Advisory Committee, and board member of the Drew Friedman Foundation. He's created dozens of logos and t-shirts for town organizations and nonprofits, including the Westport Public Schools, First Night, the Levitt Pavilion, and Project Return. And he even designed the town flag. Plus, he's responsible for art installations around town, including Tunnel Vision on Main Street, and also with Kathy Ross, the Longshore Kids mural. So let's join Miggs at home and Miggs in his studio and get an inside look at how the magic happens.
Well, thank you very much, Carol. This is a special opportunity because I get to interview, I'm not really sure why I'm interviewing this person. Confidentially, he's not my favorite artist, but we were trying to have a diverse range of artists here. And I appreciate the library giving me this opportunity. We've interviewed so many wonderful artists, and so I guess they can't all be great, but I'm going to start off with kind of a hardball question, which I don't think I've asked any of the other artists, which is, what is the point of art?
Yeah, that's a good question. What's the point of art? What's the point of anything? Music, theater, basketball, juggling. You could say it's just a distraction, which we all need in life now, especially now when we're all locked inside. Distractions are gold. But more than that, because it's a form of personal expression and sharing, it connects us with other ideas, with other people. It can challenge us. It can anger us. It can heal. It can comfort. It's just this thing on a wall or on the floor that kind of impacts our lives, and that's all good. But so kind of walk in the woods. So art is just, I think, just more accessible, and maybe has a broader range of messages for us to take in. Some people refer to it as the oxygen that sustains society or culture. And culture breathes it in and takes what it wants and leaves the rest.
Well, that was an interesting answer. I feel the oxygen actually leaving the room right now, and it's not COVID. But the next question, which we have asked other artists, is how are you coping with this situation, which has affected everybody in different ways, but especially artists? Artists tend to work alone, so maybe they're not, it's not such a difficult adjustment, but have you found yourself to be more or less creative during this period? And so how are you handling it?
I'm asked, as other artists are. This is being recorded May 23rd, still during kind of partial lockdown, and people say, "What are you doing during the lockdown? You must be very productive and creative." I do have work, some work, but not for myself, for other people. I just think it's going to take a long time for me anyway. I need kind of the perspective of time and emotions to settle down before I really know what this is all about and how it impacted me right now. I think it's kind of like being in a big collective car crash. I mean, you're in shock. I was in a car crash once. I wasn't seriously hurt. I broke some ribs, but the first thing I knew, I was lying on the street looking up at the sky. Next thing I know, I'm in an ambulance. The next thing I know, I'm in a bed. Next thing I know, I'm walking home with broken ribs because they didn't have a hospital bed. You go through all these phases of weird phases. And I think that's what we're in now. We're just dealing with all that. So yeah, to answer that question, I've been productive for other people, which makes me happy to be involved, but no personal artwork yet.
Well, I think that's nice that you're doing some work for other people. Maybe you should get busy and create. I mean, you are an artist, but which brings me to the next question is, how did you become an artist? Or what is the evolution? How did you get there? I know we all, different artists obviously have different stories. So we're curious about yours. So why don't you tell us?
I don't know. I mean, it's a weird, I think there is no formula for this kind of thing. There's no recipe. Somebody could tell me how to make lasagna and I'll struggle and I'll make lasagna, but there's no recipe for this. You just do what you do. The greatest quote I ever heard about how to be an artist was this photographer, Dwayne Michaels, who I took a seminar with a bunch of other people. And at the end of it, he showed a lot of his work and it was all interesting. And okay, so he's great and I'm not. But at the end, he said, someone asked him, "How do you do what you do?" And he said, "I practice being me every day. That's all I know." That holds true for everybody. I don't care if you're 3 years old or 30 years old or 98 years old. Practice being you. Trust what you see. If you're a musician, trust what you hear. We pick up clues from other people and we steal and we derive things from other pieces of art. We're inspired and stimulated by other things we see, but there's no formula. There's no recipe. The recipe resides in you. Make up your own recipe. I actually went to Carnegie Institute of Technology. It's now Carnegie Mellon, and I went as an electrical engineer. I have no idea how I got into that. I do know. I was in the Staples Players at Staples High School, and I was I did the lighting. I wasn't an actor. I was not an actor. Did lighting stuff, aimed lights and put gels on the lights. And somehow they thought, well, he's going to be an engineer. So I went to Carnegie as an electrical engineer. Somehow I got in. And after about a month or two, realized this was not working for me. I don't like the people. I mean, I like them, but I didn't feel comfortable with the other engineers. And I befriended, or some of the people in the drama department befriended me and convinced me I should be with them, which is more, it was in the same building as the art department. So there was a lot of crossover. I don't think I learned a whole lot at this school, but I learned everything I needed to know from my roommates and my friends there, and great people in the drama department, phenomenal talents that you're just in class with and learning from. So I guess I was inspired by creativity and trying to decide what creativity was and how to do it. They were way ahead of the game. And then I came back to Westport and I worked for a local newspaper, the Town Crier, which was a daily newspaper. And I did production design and learned the basics of graphic design, became a graphic designer by default, I guess, little by little. And that's kind of it. it's a weird, as I say, that's not a recipe anybody should follow, but
Well, I'm not good with recipes anyway, so that's lost on me. So I understand you have a piece of artwork you'd like to show us that maybe gives us some insight into, what you're doing today.
well, I will show you just for the fun of it, the very first piece of art, recorded art I ever did. It was a scribble. I think I was 5 years old. I'll put it up on the screen now. And it was a scribble, and I just was doodling on some piece of tracing paper, I think. And my father got very excited, and he was running around showing my mother, and I think he even called up his friends. And every time someone came over, he showed it to them. I had no idea what was going on. I wasn't trying to draw anything. I was just a doodle, a scribble. And it turned out, and he showed me later, there's this famous author, George Bernard Shaw. And when he turned it upside down, it turns out I'd really drawn George Bernard Shaw, channeled a scribble of George Bernard Shaw, which was meaningless. I wasn't trying, I wasn't drawing him. But it's funny, that one trigger, that one little stimulus of I drew somebody. I made a mark that actually looked like something. So I don't know if I can relate back to that or not, but that's what happened.
Actually, that is pretty interesting. You were validated. I mean, at a young age, it sounds like this mark you made on paper was actually validated and celebrated by your parents, which was kind of cool. So I understand that you're a graphic artist by profession, and we'd like to see some of your work. And Carol made reference to the flag that Rodney Dangerfield has something to do with, so maybe you could include that in your description. Okay. So here's, I'm a graphic artist, among other things, I guess. Here's just a little poster of some logos that I've done, nonprofit logos over the years. The Westport flag, which is my favorite, I guess, because it hangs on flagpoles around town. And there's a lot of other ones for the library. Wakemantown Farms, Slice of Saugatuck, Westport Public Schools, Class Poems, the Minutemen, Long Short Tennis, Project Return. This clock was done by a friend of mine, Richard Bentley. Actually, the hands should be separated. When his wife, Nina, and I curated a show called Time's Up, I believe, and that was his clock, which is one of my favorites. There's the print of the Westport flag signed by Rodney Dangerfield, because he funded the printing of 50 flags when he lived in Westport. This is the kind of artwork I'm doing into lenticular, which is an image that changes when you walk by. So there's this old beaten up barn red house that no longer exists, and as you walk by it, it turns into this Roy Lichtenstein house that was on top of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And that all came about because I got a birthday card from my aunt when I was 10 years old, and it had a lenticular on it of this baseball player swinging a bat. So it was only like 1 inch square, but I rediscovered it as an adult, and I was fascinated by it and tried to find out how to make larger versions, which I was told I couldn't do. But I did find out eventually. This is actually on my computer, which I'm at most of the day. This is the Artist Collective of Westport website. And I'm one of the co-founders, along with Nina Bentley, Tammy Windsor, Jermaine West, and Duvian Montoya. We have 150 members. Just some stuff on my walls. I designed the First Night buttons for 20 years. First Night no longer exists, sadly. One of the casualties of funding
and whatnot. This is a cover I did. I used to do illustrations, kind of pop art. This is Patty Hurst, who used to live in Westport, actually. She was on the FBI's most wanted list after she took part in a bank robbery with the Symbionese Liberation Army. And that was a magazine cover I did of her.
This is Patricia Hurst, and I'm on TV with Miggs B.
And I just have a bulletin board full of stuff, junk, that just kind of triggers memories and imagination, hopefully. Lots of other postcards, things that friends sent me, odd, weird little things that I just get a joy looking at. This is a picture. This was a wonderful opportunity I did for Project Return. I got to take one of the last pictures of Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward together. They're rarely together, and they told Project Return that if somebody could come over in 15 minutes, they would be there. I know those rare times when they were in the same place at the same time, and I was available, and I went over and took this great picture of them. I mean, a picture of them looking great.
Wow, the Newmans, that's pretty cool because they are kind of show business royalty. And Melissa Newman, their daughter, is a member of the Artist Collective, and she's an artist in her own right and a singer. So it's kind of an interesting connection there. But your artwork, I mean, your graphic art is, I guess, your profession, how you earn a living. But you do this lenticular work. It's not a fun word to say. It sounds like it sounds like some sort of arthritic condition, you know, the lenticular joints. Or anyway, could you explain what your work is all about and how you do that? Everyone seems to ask, you know, how do you do that? So here's your chance to tell us.
Here's one of my mother. This was her high school yearbook picture. She was 17 years old, and I took a picture of her when she was 97, and that's her 97. And of course, I tried to duplicate the pose so there'd be this seamless transition, and I always position the eyes in the same place because that's where we look at people, and her face changes around her eyes. If her eyes were in a different position, our attention would jump and would lose that kind of magical quality. But anyway, so how is that done? Briefly, it starts out with the two separate pictures of my mother, young and old, and they could hang side by side in a gallery just like that. But not so interesting, and kind of the contrast is maybe too harsh. Then what I do is I cut them up into stripes, like so. So each image is cut up into, in this case, 1-inch stripes. Now this is a simplified paper version of the lenticular, not what I do on the computer. Then those stripes are what's called interlaced. So they're cut up and they're reassembled with, you can tell by the gray hair, you know, I'll just say old, young, old, young, old, young, old, young, old, you know, so they're spliced together, literally, in this case, by hand. And then they are folded like an accordion, if I can get this right. And this isn't exactly, the accordion isn't folding very well here, but okay. So, you know, when the accordion is folded right, you see the older version of herself there and the younger version of herself there. And the computer version involves the same concept, but I don't know if you can look really closely at the printout. You see these little stripes? Gray and dark, gray and dark. That's old and young, old and young, old and young. But there's 30 stripes to the inch, not just 2 stripes to the inch. And then there's this plastic that's laminated over it, and the plastic has these grooves in it that you can barely, you know, I don't think you can get a good look at here. But anyway, the grooves are like, you can see the grooves. And each groove lays over, is aligned, should be aligned with a stripe in the picture. And when that works out well, then you get the transition, which when done, you know, this is like, you know, putting the casserole in the oven, and 2 hours later, here it is, all done after all, So that's the quickie version of how these lenticulars are done.
Well, that's really pretty incredible. My mother bears an amazing resemblance to your mother. You're also known for having done some time covers and postage stamps. And I guess the mystery is how many. I've heard numbers from, 3 to 3 dozen, of each. So let's clear that up. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I did one postage stamp. I'm not complaining. That's a wonderful thing. And I've done 4 Time magazine covers. Very fluky. I give a talk called Time Covers to T-Shirts because my very first paying assignment was a cover for Time magazine. I was totally unqualified. It's a fluke that could never be repeated and shouldn't be because there's many more qualified artists, but I was in the right time at the right place and could do work very fast. Anyway, and now one of my greatest pleasures is to do T-shirts for local road races and triathlons. And my work is much more visible probably than a time cover, although there's millions of those and only hundreds of T-shirts, but they're among the people that I know. And so it's very satisfying, gratifying. So here's pictures. I did the one of Nixon. Now, I had no political input in this, but this was in the 70s, and I did Time magazine's first editorial, and it's first ever editorial in their history asking Richard Nixon to resign, and it was called Nixon's Jury, the People. And then, before that was his vice president, Spiro Agnew, resigned in disgrace, and I did the cover for that. And I did 2 international covers, one of Charles de Gaulle's death and his and the person that took his place, and then one about the oil crisis. And so that's the truth about that.
All right. Well, I'm impressed. Those time covers, even one postage stamp, that's more than most people have done. Actually, I think there were 13 in Westport alone. People have done stamps, a total of 165 stamps. So you've done one. Leonard Fisher's done them. There's Ed V. Bell, Howard Muntz. Anyway, the other thing I'm curious about is the kind of art that artists have in their own home. Some artists put only their own work on the walls, and others have, so I find it tells a lot about an artist what they look at every day in their own home. Can you give us a short little tour of the art on your walls?
This is a piece by me. I have very few of my own pieces here, but this is a painting when I tried to be a painter, and this is of my son, which I do like a lot. It was just so grueling to paint, and I have such appreciation for people that do it all the time. This is a photograph by Helen Klisser-During, and it was taken when she went to Haiti after the hurricane, and this is a young girl selling alcohol and cigarettes to raise money for her family. This is a piece by ceramicist Susan Halls, amazing artist. This is a long shot of my artist wall. Lots of work I've either bought or collected or bartered with other artists, and I just love the variety of it, and it reminds me, of just all the different approaches to art. This is a portrait of me by Vince Colenso, an amazing portrait of me and my cat. Happy Oyster Shells by Holly Hawthorne. Picture of me by Mary Ellen Hendricks. A big donut floating outside the train, the window of a train that Tammy Windsor used to commute on. Barbara Ringer. Her stuff is so spooky but fascinating. This is my Larry Silver wall. I'm not sure who this photographer is. I did buy this piece, but it just fascinates me and perplexes me every time I look at it, and I look at it just about every day. It's just so bizarre, but isn't that what art is all about, I think, is just to let you step out of your own world and out of your own brain and your own perspective and jump behind the eyeballs of somebody else.
Oh, I'm so envious. I've always wanted some prints by Larry Silver. Okay, let's rub it in. So I understand you've done this installation called Signs of Compassion that's actually was first exhibited at the library, at the Westport Library before it was renovated, I think about 2 years ago. And then it went to a gallery in Hartford, I understand. And then from there it went to Montefiore Hospital in the Bronx for 6 months. And from there it went to the St. Joseph's School for the Deaf in the Bronx. And it was supposed to go to the lobby of the United Nations, they tell me. And the COVID virus shutdown got in the way of that. And maybe it'll be, I understand, in the spring of 2021. But we'd love to see it. Could you show us and explain what Signs of Compassion is?
It's based on a poem by Emily Dickinson. And people use the phrase, this piece of art really spoke to me, or it speaks to me. And I started thinking, what if art could speak to you? What if it could actually speak? And I say, how is that going to happen? You could put a voice chip, use technology and actually have a voice back in there saying something. But I realized sign language is a silent form of communication and a very expressive and articulate, economical form of communication. So using this lenticular technique where two images change one to the other, I thought it was perfect for sign language. And I did a series of 30 images of fellow Westporters. And before this pandemic broke out, it was actually scheduled to go to the United Nations. Hopefully it will get there eventually, maybe in 2021. But here's a short video, very short video, about 2 minutes of what this installation looks like.
Welcome to Signs of Compassion. My name is Miggs Burroughs, and this is my tribute to a poem by Emily Dickinson, expressed one word and phrase at a time in American Sign Language by 30 of your fellow humans. It is essentially a silent poetry reading. And this is the poem. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain. And now here are the individuals signing each word from the poem. Okay, I'll admit that was pretty interesting. Miggs Burroughs, if that's your real name. Thank you for showing us around, showing your work in your studio, in your house. And now I will send it back to Carol to wrap things up as usual. But this has been like a therapy session for me, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Miggs, to you and your alter ego for showing us around your studio and sharing a little of the mystery about how you make those lenticular photographs. To see more episodes of Artists in Residences, check out the library's YouTube channel, Westport Pub Lib, and search for Artists in Residences. Thanks, and hope to see you back at the library soon.